Captain Vex 9 clicked his mandibles in what passed for amusement among his species. 27 years of teaching combat tactics at the Galactic Military Academy, and he'd never seen a class quite like this one. 43 cadets from 17 different species, all supposedly the cream of their respective military crops. And then there was Maya Torres. The human sat in the back corner of the classroom, arms crossed, looking about as thrilled to be there as a Zephyrian slug in a salt mine. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation ponytail, and her brown eyes held that particular brand of boredom that only came from someone who'd heard this lecture 1,000 times before. Which, considering she was repeating advanced combat theory for the third time, wasn't entirely inaccurate. Today, we will be conducting practical combat exercises, Vex 9 announced, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture that encompassed the training arena beyond the classroom walls. You will be divided into teams of 4. The objective is simple: capture and hold the central platform for 10 minutes. A ripple of excitement passed through the cadets. The Thorian twins, Crix and Vox, exchanged predatory grins. Their crystalline exoskeletons gleamed under the artificial lights, and their 6 eyes glowed with anticipation. Behind them, the serpentine Naga cadet, Sills, coiled and uncoiled nervously, her scales shifting from deep purple to electric blue. The teams will be randomly selected, Vex 9 continued, pulling up a holographic display. Names began swirling in the air, forming groups with mechanical precision. Team Alpha, Crix, Vox, Genth, and Mora. Team Beta, Sills, Plex, Yor7, and Quinn. Team Gamma, Nyx, Zara, Lek, and Boran. Team Delta, Maya Torres. The room fell silent. Even the perpetual hum of the Academy's environmental systems seemed to pause. 42 pairs of eyes turned to stare at the lone human in the corner. "Instructor," Crix spoke up, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones of his species. "There appears to be an error in the team assignments." Vex 9's compound eyes swiveled to examine the display. "No error, Cadet Crix. Team Delta consists of 1 member." "1 member?" Sills hissed, her forked tongue tasting the air. "Against 3 full teams? That hardly seems fair." Maya finally looked up from her datapad, one eyebrow arched in mild interest. "Fair to who?" The comment earned a few chuckles from the other cadets, though they were quickly stifled when Vex 9's gaze swept the room. The Mantaran instructor had served in 7 different military campaigns before taking his teaching position, and his patience for disruption was roughly equivalent to a neutron star's sense of humor. "The human has volunteered to participate as a single-member team," Vex 9 explained, though anyone paying attention would have noticed he'd made no such announcement. "This will serve as an excellent learning opportunity for all involved." Translation. The faculty was tired of Maya Torres coasting through classes she could apparently pass in her sleep, and they'd decided to give her a challenge that might actually require effort. Or possibly just humble her enough to start paying attention. Maya stood and stretched, her joints popping audibly in the suddenly tense atmosphere. "When do we start?" "Equipment selection begins in 5 minutes, Vex 9 announced. "Standard Academy arsenal is available. No lethal weapons, obviously. Stun settings only." The cadets filed toward the armory with the enthusiasm of predators heading to a feeding. Maya followed at a leisurely pace, seemingly unbothered by the fact that she was about to face 12 opponents simultaneously. The armory was a marvel of military engineering, containing weapons and gear from dozens of species. Plasma rifles designed for Thorian anatomy hung next to the curved blades favored by the warrior clans of Nyx Prime. Environmental suits capable of operating in 17 different atmospheric compositions lined the walls like exotic artwork. The other teams moved quickly, their members coordinating equipment selection with practiced efficiency. Team Alpha grabbed heavy plasma cannons and shield generators, clearly planning to establish a defensive position and hold it through superior firepower. Team Beta selected mobility gear, gravitic harnesses, and lightweight energy weapons that would allow them to move quickly around the battlefield. Team Gamma went for a balanced approach, mixing long-range weapons with close combat options. Maya took her time browsing the selection, occasionally picking up a weapon or piece of armor, examining it briefly, then setting it back down. The other cadets watched her with barely concealed curiosity. What strategy could possibly work for a single combatant against overwhelming odds? Finally, she selected her gear: a standard-issue combat suit, a single plasma rifle, and a collection of what appeared to be the Academy's most basic equipment. No exotic weapons, no experimental technology, nothing that screamed tactical genius. "Interesting choices," Vex 9 commented as they moved toward the training arena. "I'm a simple girl with simple needs," Maya replied, checking her rifle's charge level with practiced efficiency. The arena was impressive even by Galactic Military Academy standards. A circular space roughly 200 meters in diameter, filled with obstacles, cover positions, and elevation changes designed to simulate real battlefield conditions. At the center sat the objective: a raised platform 10 meters square, surrounded by open ground that would leave anyone holding it exposed to fire from multiple directions. "Rules are simple," Vex 9 announced as the teams took their starting positions. "Capture and hold the central platform for 10 continuous minutes to win. Stunned combatants will be teleported out of the arena and are eliminated. Questions?" Crix raised one of his 4 arms. "What happens if the human is eliminated in the first 30 seconds? "Then you'll have learned a valuable lesson about underestimating opponents," Maya called out from across the arena. She was checking her equipment one final time. Movements precise and economical. "The exercise begins in 60 seconds, Vex 9 announced. "Take your positions." The teams spread out around the arena's perimeter, each claiming a section that would give them optimal approach routes to the central platform. Maya remained exactly where she'd started, apparently content to let her opponents make the first move. 59 seconds later, the exercise began. Team Alpha, true to their equipment selection, immediately began advancing toward the central platform with their heavy weapons at the ready. Their plan was obvious: establish dominance through superior firepower and dare anyone to challenge them. It was a solid strategy that had worked in countless real battles throughout galactic history. Team Beta split up, using their mobility gear to bound between cover positions as they circled toward flanking positions. Team Gamma advanced more cautiously, keeping their formation tight and covering each other as they moved. Maya disappeared. One moment she was standing at her starting position, clearly visible to all observers. The next, she was simply gone, as if she'd never been there at all. "Where did she go?" Sills hissed, her thermal sensors sweeping the arena frantically. "Doesn't matter," Crix replied, though his confidence sounded forced. "She's only one person. We proceed according to plan." Famous last words, as they say. Team Alpha reached the central platform first, their Thorian cadet, Genth, immediately beginning to set up their heavy weapons while his teammates established a defensive perimeter. It was textbook small unit tactics, the kind of procedure drilled into military cadets across the galaxy. That's when the first explosion happened. The blast originated from Team Beta's position, a brilliant flash of blue-white light, followed by the distinctive whine of stunner discharge. When the afterimage faded, Plex was gone, teleported out of the arena by the safety systems. "Contact!" Yor 7 shouted, bringing his weapon up to scan for targets. "I can't see anything." Neither could anyone else. The explosion had been perfectly placed to create maximum visual disruption without actually damaging anything important. Classic misdirection. The second explosion took out Quinn before anyone could react. This time, the blast came from a completely different direction, suggesting their attacker had moved at least 50 meters in the space of seconds, which should have been impossible given the terrain and available cover. "She's using guerrilla tactics," Mora observed, her enhanced Valdarian senses picking up trace scents in the air. Hit and fade. Classic asymmetric warfare. "Brilliant deduction," Maya's voice echoed through the arena, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The arena's acoustics made it impossible to pinpoint her location. "Tell me, do they teach you about human military history at this fancy school?" Crix's mandibles clicked nervously. "Some. Why?" "Just curious if you've heard about something called guerrilla warfare. We've been practicing it for about 10,000 years, give or take." The third explosion eliminated your 7, leaving Team Beta with only Sills, who was now coiled in a tight defensive posture, her scales shifting through every color of the spectrum, as her nervous system tried to process too much information at once. "This is impossible," Jenth muttered, his heavy plasma cannon sweeping back and forth across empty air. "One person cannot eliminate an entire team that quickly." Maya's laughter drifted across the arena, rich with genuine amusement. "Oh, honey, we haven't even gotten to the fun part yet." Team Gamma had apparently decided that discretion was the better part of valor and were attempting to withdraw to more defensible positions. It was actually smart tactics under the circumstances, but Maya wasn't about to let them regroup. The fourth explosion came from above. Zara looked up just in time to see a figure dropping from the arena's upper structures, rifle already trained on her position. The stun blast caught her center mass, and she vanished in the familiar blue glow of the teleporter. Maya hit the ground in a perfect combat roll, came up firing, and put 2 more shots into Lek before anyone could react. She was moving before his unconscious form had fully materialized in the teleport zone, already seeking her next position. "How is she doing this?" Nyx demanded, his 4-armed species supposedly giving him advantages in combat situations. "The human physiology shouldn't allow for this level of speed and coordination." "Maybe that's your problem right there," Maya's voice came from behind him. Nyx spun around, bringing his weapon up, but found only empty air. The shot that eliminated him came from a completely different direction entirely. Borin, the last member of Team Gamma, lasted exactly 12 more seconds. "Well," Maya announced, her voice now coming from somewhere near the central platform. "That was refreshing. Anyone else want to play?" Team Alpha had managed to maintain their position on the platform throughout the chaos, their heavy weapons and defensive positioning keeping them relatively safe from Maya's hit-and-run tactics. But with 10 opponents down in less than 4 minutes, their confidence was beginning to crack. "We stick to the plan," Crix insisted, though his harmonic undertones were distinctly off-key. "She has to come to us eventually. The objective is the platform." "True," Maya agreed. And suddenly, she was there, standing at the edge of the platform with her rifle casually slung across her shoulder. "But you're assuming I need to hold it for 10 minutes to win." The remaining cadets stared at her in confusion. She was right there, completely exposed, well within range of their weapons. It was almost too easy. The exercise parameters state that a team must capture and hold the platform. Vex 9's voice echoed through the arena. "Cadet Torres is correct. Elimination of all opposing forces would also constitute a victory condition." Maya's grin was predatory. "Thanks for the clarification, Captain." Crix brought his weapon up, finger moving toward the trigger. Maya was standing in the open, apparently unarmed, certainly outnumbered. It should have been a simple matter of point and shoot, except Maya Torres had spent her entire life on a planet where everything, including the weather, was actively trying to kill her. And she'd learned a few tricks that weren't covered in standard military manuals. The human combat technique known as moving really, really fast isn't actually supernatural, despite what various alien species might claim. It's simply the result of growing up in an environment where split-second reactions mean the difference between life and becoming something else's lunch. Combined with a skeletal and muscular system designed for a gravity well that most other species would consider actively hostile, it produces results that can seem almost magical to outside observers. Maya moved. One moment, she was standing stationary at the platform's edge. The next, she was among Team Alpha's defensive positions like a whirlwind of precisely directed violence. Her rifle had somehow transformed from a slung burden to an extension of her body, firing with mechanical precision as she flowed between cover positions that shouldn't have existed. Jenth went down first, his heavy weapons training useless against an opponent who refused to stay still long enough to target. Mora lasted slightly longer, her enhanced senses giving her enough warning to attempt evasive action. It didn't help. Vox managed to get off a single shot that passed close enough to Maya's head to singe her hair. She complimented his marksmanship even as she eliminated him with a perfectly placed stun bolt, which left Crix alone on the platform facing a human who had just systematically dismantled 11 opponents in under 8 minutes. "Well," he said, his voice carrying harmonics of resignation, "this is awkward." Maya shouldered her rifle and walked to the center of the platform. "Nothing personal, Crix. You all fought well." "We fought like we were taught," he replied. "Standard tactics, proper formations, coordinated fire patterns, everything the manuals say should work." "Yeah, about that." Maya settled into a comfortable position at the platform's center, technically beginning her 10-minute hold timer. "Your manuals are written by people who've never had to fight for their lives against a pack of razor wolves, while simultaneously avoiding the attention of acid-spitting tree slugs and keeping track of an incoming lightning storm that could fry you into component atoms." Crix's compound eyes studied her with newfound respect. "Your world sounds unpleasant. Earth's lovely if you know how to appreciate it. Great beaches, excellent coffee, and the predators keep you on your toes." Maya grinned. "Plus, we've got this wonderful tradition of making warfare into an art form. 10,000 years of humans figuring out increasingly creative ways to kill each other tends to produce interesting results." "Exercise concluded," Vex 9 announced. "Team Delta achieves victory through elimination of all opposing forces in 7 minutes, 43 seconds. The arena's safety systems began teleporting the eliminated cadets back to the observation area, where they materialized with expressions ranging from stunned disbelief to grudging admiration. Sills, the sole survivor from Team Beta, was coiled in what appeared to be a meditative trance, her scales cycling through colors that suggested she was reconsidering several fundamental assumptions about combat theory. Maya walked off the platform and began collecting her gear, movements casual and unhurried. To outside observers, she might have just finished a light training exercise rather than single-handedly defeating a force with nearly 3-to-1 numerical superiority. "Cadet Torres," Vex 9 called as the debriefing began. "Perhaps you'd care to explain your tactics for the benefit of your classmates?" Maya paused in her equipment check, considering the question. Around her, 42 pairs of eyes watched, with the intensity usually reserved for religious experiences or particularly gruesome accidents. "Sure," she said finally. "Rule 1. If you're outnumbered, don't fight fair. Rule 2. Mobility beats armor, surprise beats mobility, and violence of action beats everything. Rule 3. Your opponents will fight the way they've been trained, which means they'll be predictable. Use that." "And Rule 4? Crix asked, his harmonic voice carrying genuine curiosity. Maya's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. "Never underestimate the crazy monkey from the Deathworld." The silence that followed was profound enough to register on seismic equipment. "Questions?" Maya asked cheerfully. There weren't any, at least none that anyone felt brave enough to voice. "Excellent," Vex 9 said, his mandibles clicking in what might have been amusement. "Tomorrow we'll be covering advanced tactical theory. I suspect Cadet Torres will find the material stimulating." As the cadets filed out of the arena, conversations buzzed with analysis, speculation, and the occasional nervous glance in Maya's direction. The human had just redefined several fundamental assumptions about combat effectiveness, and everyone present knew they'd witnessed something remarkable. Maya Torres, meanwhile, was already thinking about dinner. The Academy's food synthesizers could allegedly replicate cuisine from hundreds of different worlds, and she'd been meaning to try that Altarian flamefish everyone kept talking about. After all, tomorrow was another day, and there were always new lessons to learn. Or in this case, new lessons to teach. The Academy's medical bay was busier than usual the next morning. Not because anyone had been seriously injured during the previous day's exercise, the safety systems were far too sophisticated for that, but because half the cadet corps had apparently developed sudden-onset insomnia, stress headaches, and what the medical staff diplomatically termed confidence adjustment syndrome. Dr. Helix Prime, the Academy's chief medical officer, reviewed the morning's patient roster with growing amusement. 17 cadets, all presenting with similar symptoms, all from yesterday's combat class. The Mantaran physician's 6 arms moved in complex patterns as she cross-referenced the data, her compound eyes gleaming with professional interest. "Fascinating," she murmured to her assistant, a young Valdarian named Tem, who was still learning the intricacies of multi-species psychology. "I haven't seen this kind of collective psychological impact since the infamous gravity well incident of 2387. "What exactly happened yesterday?" Tem asked, her enhanced senses picking up the elevated stress hormones that seemed to permeate the entire medical facility. A single human cadet redefined several fundamental assumptions about combat effectiveness, Dr. Helix Prime replied. The ripple effects are still being felt throughout the Academy. Meanwhile, in the faculty lounge, Captain Vex 9 was enduring what could generously be called a debriefing, though it felt more like a professional interrogation. The other instructors had gathered around him like scavengers at a fresh kill, all demanding explanations for yesterday's unprecedented events. "You deliberately stacked the odds against the human," Professor Quindar accused, her tentacles writhing with indignation. The cephalopod instructor specialized in military ethics, which made her particularly sensitive to perceived unfairness. "I followed standard randomization protocols," Vex 9 replied calmly. "The computer generated the team assignments." "The computer that you programmed," interjected Commander Rusk, his cybernetic implants glowing softly as he accessed the Academy's data systems. "Interesting how the random selection managed to isolate the one cadet who's been coasting through advanced classes." Vex 9's mandibles clicked in what might have been irritation. "Perhaps we should focus on the educational value of yesterday's exercise, rather than questioning my methods." Educational value. Professor Yilsen's crystalline voice carried harmonics of disbelief. 17 cadets are questioning their career choices. 3 have requested transfers to administrative tracks, and the Thorian twins haven't spoken since yesterday. Then they learned something important. Vex 9 replied, "Combat isn't a theoretical exercise. Real battles don't follow textbook patterns, and enemies don't fight fair." The debate might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by an urgent chime from the Academy's communication system. Admiral Corex 7's image materialized in the center of the room, her expression grim enough to freeze a solar flare. "We have a situation," she announced without preamble. "Long-range sensors have detected an unidentified vessel approaching the Academy. Configuration suggests pirate origin, possibly a raiding party testing our defenses." The faculty exchanged glances. Pirate attacks on military academies were rare, but not unheard of. The academies were tempting targets: valuable equipment, minimal defenses, and the potential for high-profile hostages. "Estimated time to arrival?" Commander Rusk asked, his tactical implants already calculating defensive scenarios. 18 hours, Admiral Corex 7 replied. "More than enough time to evacuate non-essential personnel and prepare proper defenses. However, this presents an interesting opportunity." Vex 9's compound eyes focused intently on the Admiral's image. He had served under Corex 7 for 3 years and recognized that particular tone of voice. It usually preceded decisions that would be remembered long after the participants wished they could forget them. "The senior cadets have been requesting more realistic training scenarios," the Admiral continued. "This situation could provide exactly that." "You're suggesting we use an actual pirate attack as a training exercise?" Professor Quindar's tentacles had gone rigid with shock. "I'm suggesting we give our cadets an opportunity to apply their training under real conditions while maintaining appropriate safety measures," Corex 7 corrected. "The pirates will find themselves facing prepared defenses and superior numbers. The risk is minimal, the educational value significant." Translation: The Academy's reputation had taken a hit after yesterday's events, and the Admiral wanted to demonstrate that their cadets could handle real threats, not just classroom simulations. "What about the human?" Vex 9 asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Admiral Corex 7's expression shifted to something that might charitably be called a smile. "Cadet Torres will, of course, participate. I'm curious to see how yesterday's performance translates to an actual combat situation." 6 hours later, the Academy had transformed from a place of learning into a military fortress. Defensive positions had been established, weapons systems activated, and the senior cadets assigned to various tactical roles. The younger students had been evacuated to secure facilities deeper in the system, leaving behind only those deemed ready for real combat experience. Maya Torres found herself assigned to Perimeter Defense Team 7, along with 8 other cadets who had volunteered for what was officially termed Advanced Practical Training, and unofficially known as the crazy assignment that might actually get you killed. Her teammates represented a cross-section of the Academy's most motivated students. There was Jex Prime, a Thorian engineer whose specialty was improvised explosives. Vera Blackstone, a human from the outer colonies who had grown up fighting atmospheric pirates. TikTok, a chronologically displaced warrior from a species that experienced time differently than most galactic standard races. And 5 others, all carrying the kind of determined expressions that suggested they had something to prove. "Our assignment is simple," announced Lieutenant Grix 9, a grizzled Mantaran veteran who had been pulled out of retirement to help coordinate the defense. "Hold defensive position 7 Alpha until relieved. Estimated enemy strength is 15 to 20 pirates, armed with standard raiding equipment. Maya raised her hand. What kind of standard raiding equipment are we talking about? Plasma rifles, portable shields, maybe some light armor. Nothing too sophisticated. Pirates prefer quick strikes to prolonged engagements. Right, Maya said, her tone suggesting she found something amusing about the situation. And our defensive position is? Lieutenant Grix 9 activated a holographic display showing their assigned area, a section of the Academy's outer perimeter that included several maintenance buildings, a power distribution hub, and approximately 50 meters of corridor that would need to be held against assault. Textbook defensive scenario, Vera observed, her colonial accent adding a harsh edge to the words. Overlapping fields of fire, multiple fallback positions, clear sight lines. Assuming the enemy follows textbook assault patterns, Maya replied, what happens if they don't? They're pirates, not military tacticians, Lieutenant Grix 9 assured her. They'll follow the path of least resistance, try to overwhelm defensive positions through superior numbers and firepower. Maya's expression suggested she had opinions about that assessment, but she kept them to herself. Instead, she began studying the tactical display with the kind of intensity usually reserved for religious texts or tax documents. Something bothering you, Torres? Jex Prime asked. His species' natural harmonic voice made the question sound almost musical. Just wondering why they'd hit an academy with a 15-person raiding party, Maya replied. The defenses alone should require at least 50 attackers to have any reasonable chance of success. Maybe they're not very smart pirates, TikTok suggested, his temporal perception giving him a slightly disjointed way of speaking. Or maybe they know something we don't know. That comment earned him several sharp looks from the other cadets. In military situations, the phrase, maybe they know something we don't know, was roughly equivalent to shouting fire in a crowded theater. Explain, Lieutenant Grix 9 ordered. TikTok's temporal senses allowed him to perceive probability streams in ways that most species couldn't comprehend. It was an ability that made him invaluable in combat situations and absolutely terrible at casual conversation. The timeline feels wrong, he said finally. Too many variables, too many potential outcomes. This situation has the probability signature of a much more complex event than a simple pirate raid. Meaning what, exactly? Maya asked. Meaning we should be prepared for surprises. As if summoned by his words, the Academy's alarm systems activated, filling the corridors with the urgent wail of incoming hostile contacts. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red, and automated announcements began providing tactical updates in 17 different languages. All defensive teams to positions, Lieutenant Grix 9 ordered. This is not a drill. The next few hours passed in a haze of preparation and anticipation. Defensive positions were finalized, equipment checked and double-checked, and everyone tried not to think about the fact that they were about to face actual pirates with actual weapons who had actual intentions of causing actual harm. Maya spent the time doing something that struck her teammates as distinctly odd. She was modifying her equipment, not upgrading it or adding exotic components, but actually removing features and simplifying systems. "What are you doing?" Vera asked, watching as Maya disconnected her rifle's advanced targeting system. "Reducing complexity," Maya replied, continuing to strip away electronic enhancements. All these smart systems are great in controlled environments, but they become liabilities when things get chaotic. "Those systems are designed to improve combat effectiveness," Jex Prime protested. "For normal combat, sure, but pirates don't fight normal battles. They use whatever works, ignore whatever doesn't, and adapt on the fly." Maya finished her modifications and shouldered her now significantly simpler weapon. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The first indication that TikTok's temporal senses had been correct came when the pirates didn't attack. According to every tactical manual ever written, raiders should strike quickly and decisively, overwhelming defenders before organized resistance could form. Instead, the hostile vessel had taken up position just outside the Academy's defensive perimeter and seemed content to wait. "What are they doing?" Lieutenant Grix 9 muttered, studying sensor readings that made no tactical sense. "They're learning," Maya said quietly. "Studying our defensive positions, mapping our response patterns, figuring out where we're strong and where we're weak." "That's not how pirates operate," the lieutenant insisted. "No," Maya agreed. "It's not." The realization hit the entire defensive team simultaneously. They weren't facing ordinary pirates. These were professionals, possibly military contractors or mercenaries using pirate tactics as cover for a more sophisticated operation. "We need to inform command," Vera said, reaching for her communication device. The device was dead. So were all the others. "Communication jamming," Jex Prime reported, his engineering background helping him identify the problem. "Military grade, very sophisticated." "They're isolating us," Maya realized. "Cut off our communications, study our defenses, then hit us when we're least prepared." As if responding to her analysis, the attack finally came. But it didn't come from the direction anyone expected. The first explosion originated from inside the Academy's defensive perimeter, suggesting the attackers had somehow infiltrated the facility during the hours of apparent waiting. The second explosion took out the primary power grid, plunging large sections of the Academy into darkness. "They're already inside," Lieutenant Grix 9 said, his professional composure finally cracking. "How did they get inside?" Maya was studying the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. "Maintenance tunnels, old construction access ways, maybe teleporter technology. Doesn't matter how. What matters is they're here, and we need to adapt." The third explosion answered the question of their attacker's ultimate objective. It came from the direction of the Academy's central armory, followed by the distinctive sound of heavy weapons being deployed. "They're not here to take hostages," Maya announced. "They're here to steal military-grade equipment." Which changed everything. Hostage situations had rules, protocols, negotiation possibilities. Armed robbery was a different kind of problem entirely, one that typically ended with significantly more violence and considerably fewer survivors. "New plan," Maya said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made everyone automatically listen. "We don't wait for them to come to us. We go hunting." "That's completely contrary to defensive doctrine," Lieutenant Grix 9 protested. "Defensive doctrine assumes you're facing an enemy that wants to hold territory," Maya replied. "These people want to grab what they can and get out. We make that impossible." "How?" Vera asked, though her expression suggested she was already anticipating the answer. Maya's smile was sharp enough to cut through reinforced hull plating. "We make them think the Academy is haunted." What followed was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare that would be studied by military tacticians for decades. Maya Torres, drawing on a combination of human tactical innovation and sheer creative audacity, turned the Academy's corridors into a nightmare maze of psychological warfare. The first pirate team to enter their sector found their equipment mysteriously malfunctioning. Weapons jammed at critical moments, environmental suits developed sudden leaks, and their communication devices began playing what sounded like human funeral music at maximum volume. The second team discovered that the Academy's maintenance systems had apparently achieved sentience and decided to actively oppose their presence. Doors sealed themselves at inconvenient moments, gravity fluctuated in random patterns, and the lighting systems began strobing in sequences that induced nausea in most humanoid species. By the time the third team arrived, the survivors of the first two were already spreading stories about the Academy being defended by technological ghosts and possessed machinery. "How are you doing this?" Jex Prime asked, as they moved through the maintenance tunnels, following Maya's lead through passages that shouldn't have existed, according to the Academy's official blueprints. "Human innovation," Maya replied, pausing to adjust something in a control panel that immediately caused the lights in the next corridor to begin flashing in epileptic patterns. "We've been improvising solutions to impossible problems for our entire evolutionary history." "This goes beyond improvisation," Tick-Tock observed, his temporal senses allowing him to perceive the subtle patterns in Maya's seemingly random actions. "You're conducting a form of warfare that operates on multiple levels simultaneously." Maya grinned. "Welcome to Earth military doctrine. Rule 1. If it's stupid, but it works, it's not stupid. Rule 2. The enemy can't predict your strategy if you don't have one. Rule 3. Maximum confusion leads to maximum effectiveness." The pirates, meanwhile, were discovering that their carefully planned operation had devolved into something resembling a horror movie. Equipment failures were escalating, their stolen weapons were proving unreliable, and their force was being systematically reduced by an enemy they couldn't see, predict, or effectively counter. The final confrontation came in the Academy's main assembly hall, where the remaining pirates had gathered to make their last stand. They had managed to secure several crates of advanced military equipment, but their escape route had been compromised by the Academy's mysteriously malfunctioning systems. Maya and her team arrived to find 12 heavily armed professionals in a defensive formation, their leader attempting to negotiate with Academy officials via a communication device that kept playing children's lullabies instead of transmitting messages. "Surrender now, and this can end peacefully," Maya announced, stepping into the open with her hands visibly empty of weapons. The pirate leader, a scarred veteran of numerous conflicts, stared at the young human in disbelief. "You're just a cadet." "Yep," Maya agreed cheerfully, "and you're trespassing on Academy property, which makes this a learning experience for everyone involved." "There's 12 of us, and one of you," the leader pointed out. Maya's teammates emerged from concealment around the hall's perimeter, weapons trained on the pirate. "Positions. Actually, there's 9 of us and 12 of you. But who's counting?" The pirate leader's expression shifted as he realized his tactical situation had deteriorated beyond recovery. His equipment was unreliable, his escape routes were compromised, and he was facing an enemy that had already demonstrated the ability to turn a military academy into a technological haunted house. "What are your terms?" he asked finally. "Simple," Maya replied. "You put down your weapons, return the stolen equipment, and submit to Academy security. In exchange, nobody gets hurt, and you get to tell your friends that you were defeated by a bunch of military school students." "And if we refuse?" Maya's smile carried the weight of 10,000 years of human military innovation. "Then we get creative." The pirates surrendered. Later, as the Academy's security teams processed the captured raiders and the faculty conducted their post-incident analysis, Maya Torres sat in the medical bay getting a routine post-combat examination. Dr. Helix Prime's 6 arms moved in complex patterns as she documented the complete absence of injuries despite the night's activities. "Remarkable," the physician murmured. "No stress indicators, no elevated hormone levels, heart rate within normal parameters. How do you feel?" "Tired," Maya admitted. "It's been a long day." "Indeed it has, Doctor," Helix Prime agreed. "You've managed to single-handedly redefine the Academy's approach to both tactical training and facility security in the span of 24 hours. Through the medical bay's transparent walls, Maya could see her teammates from the defensive exercise, all receiving their own post-incident evaluations. Jex Prime was explaining something to a group of engineering instructors, his harmonic voice carrying excitement as he described the improvised modifications they'd made to the Academy's systems. Vera was debriefing with the tactical analysis team, her colonial experience providing valuable insights into unconventional warfare methods. "They're good people," Maya observed. "They're better people for having served with you," Dr. Helix Prime replied. "Though I suspect the Academy's curriculum will be undergoing some significant revisions in the near future." Indeed it would. The events of the past day had demonstrated that traditional military training, while valuable, was insufficient preparation for the realities of modern asymmetric warfare. The Academy would need to adapt, to evolve, to incorporate new approaches that reflected the changing nature of galactic conflict. And at the center of that evolution would be the lessons learned from a single human cadet who had turned a routine training exercise into a masterpiece of tactical innovation. Maya Torres finished her medical examination and walked out into the Academy's corridors, where maintenance crews were already working to repair the creative modifications she'd made to various systems. Tomorrow would bring new classes, new challenges, and undoubtedly new opportunities to exceed everyone's expectations. After all, she was just getting started. The galaxy, it seemed, had a lot to learn about humans, and Maya Torres was an excellent teacher.